Just so you know, that's not a cam. Greetings and salutations. I kind of suspected this might happen. I have an injector misfire and I must track it down. Stay tuned. I apologize for the wind noise if it's an issue. If you've noticed, the thing is not running very well right now. There's a misfire someplace, and last night I went and started pulling ejector wires to find out which injector was not firing properly, and I couldn't narrow it down because at idle hardly any difference in the way the engine ran if I pulled one at a time. After I got done here, I noticed last night that the check engine light was on, so I wanted to diagnose that. I went to go get my OBD2 scanner. And this isn't OBD2, this is OBD1. The reason that's an issue is that it wasn't until OBD2 that diagnostic ports became standardized across all makes and models. And that, well, I believe, was in 1994. So my OBD2 scanner is worthless on this particular vehicle. And prior to OBD2, every make had their own diagnostic port. So if you have, like I have an OBD2 scanner, it's not even a scanner, it's just a little thing you plug in and it blinks at you. And then you got a book you need to go through and decipher what those blinks mean. Well, that's for GM, and that's the same port as an OBD2 port, I think it is. Dimensionally anyway, it's the same. I think an OBD2 will plug into an OBD1 GM. This is not a GM product, this is a Chrysler product, and they have their own diagnostic port. I don't have a Chrysler OBD1. Never fear, there's a way to be able to have the vehicle do a self-diagnosis. And that's as simple as putting the key in the ignition, turning it on, off, on, off, on, off, on within 10 seconds. And then the vehicle will go through its own self-diagnostics. And it will blink. The check engine light will blink. And it will blink in sequence. And you need to count the blinks. And then you're looking for 2-digit. You need to pair those numbers into 2 digits. So I think last night I had a map sensor code, a generic code, a generic misfire code, and an injector driver code. You saw me the opening scene of this video. You saw me plugging my battery back in. I unplugged the battery and left it set for a few minutes, and that will reset the computer. The code, the check engine light is out, but I'm still having a misfire situation. So I suspect, and I was a little bit concerned about this when I had to do the intake manifold. I removed the intake manifold to get to the exhaust manifold. Part of that was I had to remove everything off of here. I didn't take the throttle body off, but I had to remove the bracketry and had to remove all the stuff, all the vacuum lines, the fuel rail, and the harness. This is the fuel injector harness here. And then once I had the harness and everything off, I just took it and laid it over. Well, I'm afraid, because of the vintage of this vehicle, you can see, what happens to the wiring in some of these vehicles. The insulation cracks, and invariably you can get a broken wire, especially with really small, fine wires. Oh, look, there's a freaking broken wire right there. I wonder if that's broke all the way through. Yeah, it looks like it might be. Anyway. So, that's neither here nor there for right now. But what I need to do is diagnose whether or not these are actually firing, if I'm getting a signal at the plug. it very well may be that these injectors are shot. I mean, the kid I bought this from, Ryan, he said he bought it from a guy who let it set for 8 years, and that's why he had to put a new fuel tank in it and a new fuel pump and all that stuff. And it very well may be that one or a couple of these injectors have failed. So the way you can do that is to test these injectors, right? Actually test the connection. This side of the schematic, all this over here, this is the ECU pinouts. You got the map sensor, coolant temp sensor, air temp sensor, throttle position sensor, crank sensor, cam sensor, vehicle speed sensor, O2 sensor, auto shutdown relay, fuel pump relay, power steering switch, fuel tank sending unit, the ballast resistor relay, engine diagnostic comm, distributor, auto idle speed motor, that's on the throttle body, I believe, and in the ground, right side of the engine. This is the common ground. This is all the engine grounds, and then finally over here is the injectors, 1 through 6. On one leg of the injector, there's two. Let me grab an injector, a similar injector harness. This connector is a little bit different than the one on the Jeep, but the principle is the same. You have a 2-pin connector. On one side is your signal, and the other side is a constant 12 volt. So the ECU is sending a signal to one side of the injector, and that's controlling the pulse width. So the first thing I want to check here on each one of these injectors to make sure that the connector is getting a signal from the ECU to fire. I'll use a test light as soon as I can find it. I probably have to spend the rest of the day looking for the damn test light because I just can't seem to put things away when I'm done with them. If these fail, then I need to test the pinouts at the ECU and make sure that the ECU is sending a signal. If these fail, if I test these pinouts and they fail, it's a bad ECU. If I test the ECU and they pass, there's a break between the ECU and the injectors, and I need to track it down. Then the other thing I can do is I can test continuity. I can actually test the continuity between the injector and the ECU. So I can test those wires individually and make sure there's not a break in the wire. If all those tests pass, I've got a signal from the ECU going to the injector, and I have a signal at the injector connector, and everything's good, then it's going to be a bad injector. I think what's probably likely is that when I took that harness over and I flipped it over, that there's a bad wire somewhere inside that harness, and I'm going to have to track it down. So first thing I need to do is start pulling the little clips off those injector connectors so I can get them off, and then I'll test each one of those connectors.
Okay. Got my test light grounded over there on the ground. So these should all be positive on the left-hand side. Double check just to make sure. Now I'll take my test light and hook it to positive. I'll probe the right hand side of that connector. You faintly see that, you probably can't in the camera because it's a GoPro. That one's firing. 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 They're all firing. So that tells me that it's the injectors that are bad, which doesn't surprise me. Ran fine before I pulled everything off of there to fix that exhaust manifold. When I pulled the injectors off and started moving around and stuff, that something internal in those injectors kind of screwed the pooch. What? See if I got check engine light. No, I'll check engine light. Let's see, I want to do a diagnostic. Two. 27, 1227. Five, 55. That's the end of diagnostic. 55 means it's the end of the diagnostic session. So I got 12 and 27, and I think 27 is the driver. Oh, gotta love electrical problems. Why is everything an electrical problem with these things? Son of a biscuit.
Moments later.
Back from the parts store. Some Seafoam. If you never use this stuff, meh. It's okay, I suppose. Well, I'm gonna throw, I don't have much gas in this thing. I'm gonna throw probably half this can into the gas tank so it can get run through the fuel injectors. And then I'm gonna run the other half through the intake plenum and try to clean some of that shit out, and I'll show you how to do that. But I need two hands. Oh, Lord Spirit. There. That should do that. Start this up. I have this here vacuum line. This is supposed to go up to the valve cover.
at this. That's what happens when you use Seafoam, man. Burns all that carbon out of it. Look at all the garbage coming out of that tailpipe. Still missing a little bit. Significantly better. Not perfect. Still needs a set of injectors, but at least it's not running like total dog shit. Run some fresh fuel in through that, and maybe another Seafoam treatment, and we'll see how that works. And yeah, $8 for a can of Seafoam. It's cheaper than a set of injectors. A lot better. Set you back here. fixed. That was relatively easy, actually. So I first started out what I thought was a broken wire, and then maybe a bad injector. Turns out to be just dirty injectors. And I hope this video was informative and helpful. If you have a pre-OBD2 Jeep Cherokee and you're trying to diagnose your you got check engine light on, you're trying to figure out what it is, I'll turn the key on and off 3 times. So it'll be on, off, on, off, on, off, on, and it'll start the self-diagnostic sequence. And you count, there'll be a flash or multiple flashes, and then a pause and another flash, and you want to count those numbers in pairs. So if you got like flash, pause, flash, flash, that's a 12. And code 12, when I got on this car, was a 12, a 27, and a 55. A 12 is the battery's been disconnected sometime in the last 50 cycles. 27 is a fuel injector driver issue, but it doesn't pinpoint which one, so you need to figure out which one it is. In my case, I pulled each one of these things off, and it made very little difference in how it ran. So, and you saw I tested the connections, and they all passed. So the driver's actually sending a signal. And then the third code was 55, and that code is just the end of the test sequence. If any of these injector plugs would have failed, then I would have to go on back here and back probed the injector harness, or determine which pinout was defective at the injector, and test the continuity between the ECM and the injector, and then to back probe the pin to make sure that the ECM was actually sending a signal to the driver. That if you test the continuity between the wire harness up here and the injector, and it passes, then it's probably going to be an ECM issue. But in my case, because it was running fine before I did the intake manifold swap, I determined that it was either going to be a broken wire somewhere in that harness, and usually there's going to be a break somewhere in here in this part of the harness, but that's not the case. Again, I hope this video was informative and entertaining. If it was, smash that like button. Share it with your vast social media network. Click the sub button underneath this window, and also the bell icon right next to it, so YouTube will notify you next time I upload a video. Check the links in the description for products that I use on these projects, or the equipment that I use to make the videos. You know, if you're in the market for any of that stuff, I appreciate if you went through one of those links. And if you're not interested in any of that stuff and you're going to shop on Amazon anyway, could you just go through one of those links for me? That way the channel can earn a little bit of commission. You know, it's just pennies, but every penny helps. So until next time, you have fun, stay safe, shoot straight, keep your powder dry, have a splendid day. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.